Hello everyone, happy fall y'all. This video has 3 amazingly delicious recipes that are absolutely perfect for fall. You want to try these, I know you do. 2 brand new recipes I have never made before, and 1 tried and true that we love any time of year, but especially at fall. I'll show you a little twist on that one that I did this time, and then I'm showing you a dessert. If you haven't made this one before, you gotta put it on your list. Hi guys, it's almost dinner time. I am getting it going here. In my skillet, I'm going to saute some onions, some mushrooms, and some multicolored peppers to get this dish started. I am making a Cajun shrimp and sausage pasta. Not anything I've made before. I've had recipes like this pinned and written down and here and there for a long time, and I just haven't made it. So tonight's the night. Next up, I'm going to add mushrooms. I've got a whole little 8-ounce package here. I think I'm going to do about half-ish, maybe a little less than half. I don't want to make a huge portion of this to eat on for days and days. I just want to make a smaller portion for us to have tonight for dinner. Maybe a little leftovers for tomorrow, we'll see. But we're going to be busy and out of the house, different things the next couple of days, so I just don't want a whole big portion of this made up. And then this is just a little bag that I have of odds and end peppers, that pepper strips that and some red onion. So I had this all prepped up for something and didn't use all of it. And so I do not like to waste. If you've been around here long, you know that. I try to find a way to use everything that I pay for. If I'm going to buy it, I want to try my best to use it. So when I have things like that, I can just throw those in the freezer, and they are perfect for a time just like this. This has a couple little red onions, but I don't need a whole lot of peppers for this dish. This is actually the perfect amount to me. And that's just great that I have that in the freezer and I can utilize them in this dish. All right, these are all done. And I'm going to remove them to a plate here. Now to my skillet, I am adding just a little bit of smoked sausage. Again, I don't want to make a huge portion of this dish. I'm going to add a little bit of water to deglaze the pan. And then I'm just going to let these cook for just a couple minutes. They won't need a whole lot of time. And that deglazing, of course, brings up all of these bits on the bottom, which adds so much flavor. I will link below the recipe, I guess, that I'm closest following, but I'm really not following a recipe, more of just a method. There are a lot of recipes out there for a Cajun shrimp pasta. So I just found something that was similar to what I had on hand and what I wanted to have in mind, and I'm kind of just going from that as an inspiration or a guide. So look below and I will have a recipe or 2 linked for you to look at for inspiration like I did. Now for my shrimp, I've got about 6 ounces or so of shrimp is what I'm using for this kind of reduced portion. I'm cutting the recipe kind of in half, I would suppose. So for this shrimp, I'm going to add in the Cajun seasoning the shrimp has been kind of thawed and drained, rinsed and drained. And then I'm going to put this over it and let this sit for a few minutes before I get this in the pan. And I am going to use probably a couple tablespoons of this because this will season the entire dish. There it is, good and seasoned up. Okay, to go along with our Cajun shrimp and sausage pasta, I am going to make some Copycat Olive Garden Cheddar Bay Biscuits. I'm starting off with this Jiffy baking mix. Calls for 2 cups of that, so I'm going to get that into my little bowl here. And y'all know how I love to shred my own cheese. I don't have the kind of cheese that it's calling for. I'm going to use, I have some bar cheese, just not the right kind. I'm going to use this Mexican shredded cheese already, and it calls for a 1/2 cup. So I wish I had cheddar like it called for, but I don't. So let's get in a 1/2 cup of this shredded cheese. We're just going to eyeball a 1/2 cup here. So this will be fine. I wish I had the cheddar, but I don't today, so let's just use what we've got. We also need some garlic, so I'm going to be using my little pre-minced garlic, and it calls for, you know, it calls for garlic powder instead of raw garlic. Well, I'm going to put some of this and some garlic powder. How about that? We love garlic around here, so let's just do a little dab of garlic, and we'll get the garlic powder here in a minute. We need 2/3 cup of milk. My brain computed that as 1/3 cup. I ended up adding in more here in a minute. Of course, the garlic powder, we need parsley. I'm reading a recipe off my phone. Garlic powder. Go in with a little bit more milk. All right, I'm going to put some parsley in the mix, and I'm going to put in just a little bit. I've got some butter pretty soft already. So I'm just gonna kind of put a little bit in here. And then of course some butter will go over the top. So let's kind of get that mixed around. Okay, these look ready to roll. Real quick, before I put these in the oven, I want to put a little bit of the parsley on the top. I could also put that in the butter when I brushed it on, but I'm just going to do it just like this. All right, the next 2 components are these 2 things here. So I've got this really fun pasta from Trader Joe's, trophy pasta. It's really fun looking. So I've had this for a while and just haven't decided on what to use it for. So I'm going to use some of that, not the full bag of course. And then most recipes call for making your own sauce, and that was my plan. But we just have a little bit of heavy cream, and I don't want to use all of that because we need that for coffee. So I have several jars of this in the pantry. This is a perfect time to pull something like this out. So this will be my sauce. Otherwise, you can make it yourself, of course, with heavy cream, chicken stock, some flour. Like I said, refer below to some recipes, but if you want a shortcut, this is perfect. Now I am going to saute my shrimp with some garlic. I'm doing my shrimp separately because I only want to keep it in here for about 2 to 3 minutes. I do not want to overcook the shrimp. So butter, some shrimp, some garlic, got that all seasoned up. And of course you can see the Cajun seasoning that I had over the shrimp is definitely leaving some flavorful sauce there with that butter. Now in goes everything else that I already sauteed, the sausages and the vegetables, everything in together for just another minute or so, and then I will add in the pasta. I have boiled that separately, drained it, that's going in, and on top the jar of sauce. You can see here, even though this has a few different steps, sorry, my camera got really dark for some reason there, but even though this has a few different steps, it comes together very quickly and very easily. I cannot express how absolutely delicious this was. We loved it so much. James very much loved it, and our son Gunnar and Abigail and the boys stopped by for just a quick minute. They tried some. They thought it was so good. Here I'm just putting some shaved Parmesan cheese over the top. Like I said, it was delicious. All right, my biscuits have come out of the oven. I've melted the butter, and I am just brushing the tops so they can just have some extra buttery goodness when we serve them up. Here is my plate. I have a portion of the pasta, a salad. I made some homemade ranch dressing earlier in the day, and the Cheddar Bay biscuit. I give this an A++, so did James. It's very easy, very comforting, and just absolutely delicious. I will be making this regularly. You have to try this one. And if that last recipe wasn't over the top delicious, this one is too. I'm telling you what, 2 absolutely delicious recipes that you need to try. This one is a cheesy sausage cornbread casserole. Look at how good that looks right out of the oven. I'm telling y'all, this is delicious. I started off with 1 pound of this Bob Evans spicy pork sausage. Use whatever sausage you want. You just need 1 pound of it. And you just want to brown that up in your skillet until it is completely cooked through. And of course, remove the fat from the skillet. Get that grease all drained off before you move it into your baking dish. Next up, you will need a pouch of cornbread mix. I found this Cotton Country cornbread, and I am adding it into my mixing bowl here, but instead of just adding water, I'm adding milk, an egg. I'm going to be adding a small can of diced green chilies and a can of cream style corn. Now you could use any type of cornbread mix that's about that same size package, I would think, and if you find a Mexican style, that would be great. You could leave out the green chilies, you could leave them out regardless, but the original recipe called for a Mexican style cornbread, which I was not able to find. But the green chilies, if you buy them mild, they just add such good flavor to any recipe. So if you think you would like those, I would suggest leaving those in for sure. So once this gets mixed, it is going to be the topping for this casserole. Now that our sausage is cooked and drained, it's going to go in the bottom. This is not a 9 by 13. I'm not exactly sure of the measurements on this baking dish here, but it's a little smaller than a 9 by 13. So I'm putting all my sausage down here first, and I'm going to get that spread out evenly. I did spray my baking dish here with cooking spray. That's an important step as well. And then once your sausage is all spread out, you're going to start topping it with cheese. Now, there are a lot of recipes out there that are kind of similar to this that I have found. A lot of different like tamale type recipes, that type of thing. Tamale pie, that is. But the recipe I'm following said instead of shredding the cheese, to lay it out in these little bars. So this is an 8-ounce block of Colby Jack that I just cut into these little bar slices to cover the top of the sausage. I think the shredded cheese would be just fine. I just followed the recipe as it was. was, I wanted to try it this way. And it definitely does bake this way. It bakes like as a whole layer of like cheese. I don't know. It was interesting the way it baked up, and I would say I might continue to do it this way. But like I said, the shredded style would be just fine. Once that is all covered with the cheese, you put on the cornbread mix that you've already mixed up, and that goes on as your topping. Now, as always, you guys, I will have recipes or links below. This particular one I will have typed out for you below, so make sure you check down there in the description box for this complete recipe. Now this is going in the oven to bake up. I, of course, am putting a little bit of green on the top. This time it is cilantro, dried cilantro. Here it is out of the oven. Again, a new recipe that has quickly become a favorite. We already know, and it will be on repeat. I just can't wait to serve both of these to my family because I know they are going to love them both. This one, I did not plate it up looking very lovely, but it looks lovely right here as I'm getting it out. The cornbread, the cheese, the sausage, and you'll know I love sausage anyway, so the fact that this recipe had sausage in it instead of ground beef, I just thought was fabulous. Like I said, it didn't look real wonderful plated up, but just take my word for it, it is wonderful. We just served it alongside some mashed potatoes for a scrumptious fall meal. Now take a look at this cheesy ham and potato soup. We love this around here and we have it often, but it's delicious in the fall and winter seasons. It was the quickest one I've ever made, and here's why. I had some cheesy potatoes left over from a casserole in my freezer. That coupled with this right here, the spicy jalapeno cream cheese that I had just probably 2 tablespoons left in the bottom of that container, I decided to add into this. This made this so good. So yeah, I had the cheesy potato casserole, I had a little bit left over, and I knew I could make either a soup with that or add it to something. So today it was the perfect amount for James and I to have 2 really nice sized bowls of soup, a bowl each for dinner, and it got that out of my freezer. So I put that in the little saucepan here. I added in just a little bit of chicken broth to kind of get it going again since it had been in the freezer. I added in some blocks of cubed up Velveeta here. Of course, those 2 tablespoons of the spicy jalapeno cream cheese, and I just let this simmer together. I added in just a splash of milk at the end, and it was so delicious. So I encourage you, if you don't have a particular potato soup recipe that you follow, look on the internet or look in your cookbooks. There are so many varieties for potato soup, cheesy ham and potato soup, ham, potato, corn chowder. There's all sorts of different ways that you can use a potato to make a wonderful soup. And I am so glad I saved those leftovers because this meal was so quick and easy to put together on a Monday, and I was super busy on that day. It worked out perfect. Sometimes we like croutons, sometimes we like saltines or Ritz, who knows, but tonight was Ritz. Put a little crushed red pepper and some parsley flakes on the top, and I don't know that there's ever a time that potato soup isn't delicious. So this is another meal that we had this week. Hopefully it'll give you some inspiration to make yourself a big pot of cheesy ham and potato soup too. Last but not least is this delicious recipe for honey bun cake. It is a Betty Crocker recipe. It is an old classic, tried and true. Starts off with a yellow cake mix. This recipe is special. Years ago, when our boys attended a Christian school, when they were very small, they attended a Christian school for a few years before we started homeschooling, and the pastor's wife's dad baked up this cake and brought it into school one day. And my middle son, Gunnar, loved this cake so much. I remember him coming home that day and saying, "Mom, Brother Arnold made this cake and brought it in today, and it was so good. I loved it so much. You have to get the recipe." So I told him later how much Gunnar loved that cake, and a couple services later at church, he brought me this very picture that I showed you, the recipe that was torn off the back of the Betty Crocker cake mix box, he brought me that and he said, here's the recipe. And so for all of these years, when I make this cake, I get out that little piece of cardboard that was torn off the box, and that's what I follow. Now, if you just type in Betty Crocker honey bun cake, you will find this one, because like I said, it is a tried and true classic recipe. The fun thing about it is you use a cake mix, you add some sour cream to it, you add a few more, maybe 1 or 2 eggs more than normal, and it makes a really thick batter. But in between the batter, you put a little bit down, then you put this mixture, which is brown sugar, flour, cinnamon, and pecans. And I didn't have near enough pecans for what the recipe called for. I didn't realize I was low on pecans, but this goes in the middle, and then you put more batter on the top, and then you put a glaze on there. It is so good. This is such a classic, especially cold weather month recipe, but for fall especially. It makes your house smell amazing. It just is, it's a recipe that just feels like fall, if you know what I'm saying. But like I said, once you try it, you'll just want to have it year round. We certainly love it so much, and you've probably made this one, but if you haven't, you definitely need to. This is one of our fall favorites for sure. Now for the glaze, it's a cup of powdered sugar, and I think it's a teaspoon of vanilla and a teaspoon, one or the other, of milk. But I decided to add this French vanilla creamer instead because I knew that would be wonderful flavor. Just went off the rails a little bit there with that, but I think it was a fabulous idea. It worked out perfectly. Just gave it some extra flavor. But yeah, you just stir this all together, and it's goes over the top of your cake while it's warm. Kind of like a poke cake, I guess, if you will. This was probably around before they started calling cakes poke cakes, but you kind of prick it with your fork while it's warm, and you pour this glaze all over the top. Well, that is it, you guys. Thank you once again for spending some time here with me down on the creek. Don't take for granted any time that you come by and spend some time here. I hope that you leave feeling inspired this week for fall recipes, especially this time of year. Something about these cozy home style kind of comfort foods, they just seem like that's what we gravitate towards during this fall season. So I hope something here today looked good to you, and you may want to add it into your meal plan. Thank you all for being my friend, for being here. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and if you haven't subscribed, we would love to have you around here. Hit that subscribe button. That way you'll know every time I'm here in the kitchen, and you can be here with me. See you next time, good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise.